What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be reacting to when NASCAR's nicest driver lost his mind. I feel like this video was requested like a month plus back but I'm finally getting around to it. Like I said, I've got so many requests to get through, so I'm just working my way through each one now that I'm off from work for a bit. But I'm going to start with this one today. I don't know who they're going to be talking about here, so I have no idea what happened to this supposed nice driver. But I'm looking forward to getting into it, so I'm just going to shut up and we'll get straight into it.
Carl Edwards. He's known by many as the nicest NASCAR driver ever. Most of the time, his races and radio were filled with lighthearted jokes,
We got a wheel coming off, or just have a square tire on there.
apologies towards competitors,
No, that's 100% me.
and the utmost respect for others. During his Hall of Fame career, he played a large part in maintaining the courtesy in racing, and he almost always made sure to race others cleanly. But on rare occasions, even the nicest of us can snap and completely lose control of our actions. Carl was successful upon entering the NASCAR Cup Series. He won 4 races in his first full season in 2005 and was set to become the next perennial championship contender. Make no mistake, Carl genuinely is a good dude. His wins were extremely wholesome, as he had the signature celebration of doing a backflip off the car, then usually giving a great interview, giving genuine praise to his team and even his competitors, and admitting how lucky he was to be given the opportunity. But after a less successful 0-win 2006 and an inconsistent 2007, Carl would have to be patient for his hopes of repeated championship contention to become realistic, and perhaps some frustrations began to arise. In September of 2007, Edwards ran a Busch Series race, the second tier of NASCAR, at Kansas. In this race, his teammate at Roush Fenway Racing, Matt Kenseth, ran up the track slightly entering a turn, which led to some contact between him and Edwards. This contact resulted in Carl's left front tire going flat and a 38th place finish. When he got out of his car, Carl gave Kenseth a sarcastic clap and thumbs up to show his displeasure. The pressure of competition was starting to get to Carl.
From the nice guy.
This was one of the first times we saw the nice guy genuinely upset.
Yeah.
But if it stopped there, it wouldn't really be anything of note. We could chalk it up as a harmless incident that drivers got over rather quickly. But of course, the tension between Kenseth and Edwards remained for the rest of the season. At Martinsville Speedway a month later, though it had no broadcast coverage, Carl Edwards bumped Matt Kenseth out of the way to make a pass. At a track like Martinsville, this is common behavior, especially in the final laps, but can be frowned upon by some drivers with high standards for courtesy. Matt Kenseth absolutely was one of those drivers with high standards, and as a champion of the series, he decided he needed to teach the young Carl Edwards a lesson about courtesy. So he shoved Edwards back out of the groove, taking his spot back and causing Edwards to drop multiple positions. After the race, as you'd imagine, Carl was upset. He had been in the crossfire of Kenseth's car twice in the last month, so confronted him. When Carl came up to Matt, he shoved him against the pit wall, gave him a few pats on the chest, and did it all with a smile. TV analysts
with a smile, that's kind of creepy.
Until he reached in for a punch. But in the end, Carl didn't actually punch Matt. Instead, he pulled back, began to smile again, and walked away. This confrontation remains one of the weirdest in NASCAR history. Is it better that Carl controlled himself and stopped the fight before it started? Or is it scarier that he does it all with a smile?
Yeah, that is scary.
Kurt Busch, a former teammate of Carl, had a clear opinion
stunned
on the
in
matter.
silence.
I've seen it all
I'm kind of creeped out.
He'll give you that flashy smile, but at the same time, he's got something underneath his breath for you.
Matt Kenseth, on the other hand, years later, simply dismissed the run-ins he had with Carl as immaturity on both ends. Both drivers not seeing eye to eye and refusing to sit down and work out their differences. Whatever the problem was, it was certainly worked out, as Carl later apologized and Matt and Carl would go on to work together as teammates for another 5 years at Roush Fenway Racing and another 2 years later on at Joe Gibbs Racing.
Crazy.
But it wouldn't be the last moment where Carl seemed to snap. In 2009, we saw perhaps the craziest finish in NASCAR history at Talladega Superspeedway. In this era, the fastest way to get around the track was often in 2-car tandems that pushed straight past the typical packs that we had seen for years. In the final laps of this race, Brad Keselowski pushed Carl Edwards in a tandem all the way from deep in the field to the front and past another tandem of Ryan Newman and Dale Earnhardt Jr. When it looked like the duo was about to win, Brad Keselowski stepped out from the back of Edwards' car, first looking high, then looking low. Carl did everything he could to block this move, but his second block attempt failed, and the ensuing crash resulted in him flying into the fence.
I think I've seen that before.
But in true nice guy, upbeat fashion, Carl got straight out of the car and
ran across the line
to symbolically finish the race, despite it not actually counting. In his interview after the race, Carl was grateful that he was okay, and deflated but honest. He admitted he made a bad block on Brad. He even explicitly said that he had no issue with Brad's move to go inside. But what a driver says and what he thinks aren't exactly always the same thing.
Everything's great.
And we know that NASCAR drivers are more than capable of holding a grudge for long periods of time.
Yeah.
One other incident near the end of 2009 likely frustrated Carl's temper even further. In a nationwide series race at Memphis, Brad Keselowski again got into the back of Edwards while they were racing for 5th place. This incident was clearly Brad's fault. Luckily for Carl though, his car would receive no damage and a number of restarts would allow him to recover back up to 6th place. But in the meantime, Brad Keselowski would go on to win the race. So while Carl's day wasn't ruined, he surely kept note of this moment in the back of his mind.
Oh no.
The rest of 2009 and the first 3 races of 2010 would make you think that any bad blood between Edwards and Keselowski had been settled.
Yeah.
But at Atlanta Motor Speedway in March, Carl Edwards would finally snap. On lap 41, Brad Keselowski got into the back of Carl on a restart, sending Carl up the track and into Joey Logano in the wall.
Oh no.
On the radio after the incident, Carl was not happy. His race was ruined. He brought the car back to the garage where the team worked diligently to fix it for 150 laps. In this time, when Carl was out of the car waiting for repairs, he was interviewed by Fox, and in typical nice guy fashion said this.
I really thought it was his fault, but that replay doesn't look like it was as malicious as I thought.
But in reality, when Carl came back out 150 laps down, he was on a mission to find Brad Keselowski's car.
Oh no.
And when he did everything in his power to ruin Brad's race. After a lap of trying,
Really?
Carl finally turned to Brad, flipping his car, sending him into the fence, and putting his life in severe danger. After the wreck, Brad even radioed in.
My goodness.
I don't know if I'm okay.
This moment was shocking to everyone, from the fans to the announcers. While there was no way for Carl to know how dangerous the wreck would turn out to be, turning someone on the straightaway at a high-speed track like Atlanta is not a good idea, or a safe way to retaliate or show your frustration. Even if Brad hadn't flipped, the crash into the outside wall would have been driver's side and likely almost as dangerous.
Yeah.
This was appalling, so NASCAR instantly called Edwards down to the official hauler where he would be ejected from the rest of the race.
Oh,
The craziest
no.
thing about this incident was how premeditated it was. Carl had 150 laps outside the car and another 100 laps of riding around in the back to think about what happened and get over it, or decide to confront Brad after the race. But instead, he let the emotion of revenge control him and chased down Brad.
Never good when that
But
happens.
you would think that after this horrifying incident, enough would be enough, and Carl would put aside the animosity he held towards Brad.
Did he
But
not?
it didn't stop here.
Oh no.
Later that year at Gateway International Raceway in July, Carl Edwards would find himself once again fighting for a win with Brad Keselowski. They came to the white flag bumper to bumper, and Brad made a dive into turn 1 to get underneath Carl. Brad's car wouldn't stick, so he washed up the track and into Carl. This slowed Carl down a ton, and allowed Brad to get side by side with him down the back stretch and entering turn 3. This time, they made it through the turn clean, and Brad came out with the advantage. Just when it looked like we might have a photo finish on our hands, Carl turned left on the straightaway once again, taking out Brad in another horrifyingly terrible crash.
Really? Oh!
After the race, Carl was severely penalized, fined, and put on NASCAR probation. You might think, what if it was hard racing for the win? Surely no one would wreck someone so dangerously twice on purpose.
Yeah.
But after the race, Carl basically admitted that he turned Brad in retaliation for what happened in turn 1.
Man, I just couldn't let him take it from me. I had to do what I had to do.
This kind of wrecking
my
for the
God,
win
that's
is unprecedented. In NASCAR, we occasionally have revenge wrecks and
The fact that he admitted that as well.
No one wrecks someone on purpose for the win. That's the entire point of Dale Earnhardt's famous, "I just meant to rattle his cage" quote. You simply don't endanger someone like that. But Carl Edwards, the nicest driver in NASCAR, did just that. And he did it to the same driver twice.
Twice,
one time in wrath, another time in greed. So is Carl Edwards secretly a psychopath hiding behind a facade of niceness?
Yes,
well, the way I see
because
it,
he does it all with a smile. That's
soon get over his
creepy.
rivalry with Brad Keselowski, and by the fall of 2011 was cracking jokes with him.
Yeah, Carl, why didn't you pit there? I was wondering the same thing.
Screw you, Brad.
Furthermore, he seemed to get increasingly nicer as he aged, to the point where, when he crashed out of the championship race in 2016, he went to personally apologize to the team of Joey Logano, the other championship driver
I
that
have
he
seen
crashed
that
with.
clip.
Say what you will about these incidents with Keselowski and Kenseth, but no other NASCAR driver that I know of would have the composure, maturity, and class to apologize to a competitor in such a stressful situation.
Yeah.
Perhaps the pressure of it all was a big reason why Carl retired in the following off-season, and has really faded out of the NASCAR scene to spend time with his family. But his Hall of Fame
that's
induction
nice.
this year was absolutely merited. This story shouldn't be taken as a slight to Carl Edwards. We shouldn't judge a man by his lowest moments, especially when every little thing he did for over a decade was televised. Instead, we should take it as a cautionary tale. No matter how nice your favorite driver, actor, or athlete is in interviews, at the end of the day, they are still human and make mistakes just like you and I. So we should not worship these figures as idols, but rather appreciate their fantastic abilities and move on with our lives. But at the end of the day, the unprecedented nature of these 3 incidents will likely always be remembered by the NASCAR community.
Okay, I don't know what I was expecting going into that video, but that was creepy. I've just like reevaluated it in my head. I'm like, he did all of that with a smile. I wonder if when he was like crashing out Brad, he was sat in the car crashing him out with a smile. That would be so unbelievably creepy if he was doing that. But the clip of him at the beginning, like going to punch, I can't remember who it was, but and then he just pulled away with a smile. I was like, I don't know if I'd want to be on the receiving end of somebody who actually punched you, or somebody who was going to go punch you and then just pulls back with a smile and walks away. Like, that is terrifying. But he does look like a nice guy, and he said in the video, like, after those incidents, from then on, he just increasingly got nicer after that. So I don't know, but maybe he is some, like, he's got some underlying sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies underneath there. I don't know, but I did enjoy that video though. So with that being said, if you have any other videos that you'd like me to react to, drop them in the comments. I'm working my way through everybody's suggestions at the moment. If you did want to check out any of my other socials or become a Patreon member and get early access to videos like this, or top priority of your suggestions, then you can do all of that down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's reaction, and I will catch you next time for the next one. Bye!